Thank you all for returning to our sixth annual Functional Medicine Symposium. I've got two guests that I know personally. They're good friends of mine, and we're going to depart from the usual format and topics of functional medicine and the clinical aspect and talk more about how to build a sustainable practice. There are many of you out there that are on the fence about, do I leave the system? How do I get out of the matrix, and how do I survive in this new environment? So I want to introduce Adam and Eléa, and they'll give their a bio on themselves, and then they'll jump in with some things that they're doing and how they can help functional medicine practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely, JP. So I'm Adam Von Ens, and together with Eléa Faucheron, we created MoveThinkSmile, and we specialize in integrative marketing and functional business growth, specifically impact-driven profit systems. And what that basically means is we are 100% about tipping the scales from sickness to wellness. Gosh knows we've had a pandemic way before the big C hit a few years ago. I'm sure we can all agree on that one. We're preaching to the choir, but it's about tipping the scales from sickness to wellness and saving your patients out there thousands of dollars over managing and mitigating chronic lifestyle diseases, while boosting your bottom line with profit margins upwards of 97% in the six-figure range. And so that's where we really kind of specialize. We've been in the business industry for a long time. If you look at it, I guess we've been in health or wellness in some form or fashion for the past 25 years. So either from a fitness kind of like related way, and or having our own wellness programs and working with people, and or working with functional integrative practitioners. Eléa, you're muted.
You mute.
Thank you. Yeah. And really, for me, having come from a background of, a life coaching certification, but also having gone through in our very first business, really what felt like a extreme level of burnout where, again, because I feel like for me, I really understand the core of the struggle of starting your own business and or maintaining a sustainable business over the long haul, especially, when you're seeing a lot of people one-on-one. And so, going through my own experience, I ended up writing a book about it. And as Adam alluded to, we also then started a program for burnt out professionals who are struggling with fatigue. And then, of course, that morphed into helping other functional practitioners be able to take their health offers online. But also, we really started morphing and looking at, okay, how could a practitioner really start to leverage their time more so it's less one-on-one and start to implement a little bit more group work. So the one-on-one is not gone, but there is this addition of a little bit of group work, which allows practitioners to be able to maximize their time with clients. But then also the really cool thing is for clients all kind of struggling with a similar issue to be able to not be alone and isolated. Because one thing we realized too about a big part of our medical system is that people are really isolated from each other. And so to have people moving in the same direction, all working and overcoming a certain illness is really, really powerful.
Well, Eléa, I like what you just said there, and to stack on what she's talking about is what we really specialize in is we take a functional approach with functional practices. So JP, I'm sure you can appreciate this. Do you tell every one of your patients to have the same diet and to take the same supplements when they come in the door?
Heck no, it's all individualized, personalized, or what we call precision medicine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why is it as functional integrative practitioners, we tend to treat our business the same? Why is it we try to mimic the healthcare system? Why is it we try to go after that transactional model? What we like to do is take a functional approach with the business, look at how all the pieces and parts are working together, integrative, and make sure that we're having a transformational model. That first and foremost, that the people that you're walking in your door and showing up are getting the strongest results possible in the fastest period of time. Now, what Eléa was alluding to was one of the structures we use. Now, this can organically evolve to anything, would be a hybrid group. And that means somebody comes in, obviously you're going to have personal one-on-one with them because we're talking about some privacy issues and HIPAA and health and stuff like that. But then incorporating some level of group, and we say group, we mean behavior change. Because we know all day long, you can out supplement, out diet, out hydrate, or out sleep a stressed out brain. It does not matter how well their blood work is coming back. You can pump them full of supplements all day, but if up here, The brain is sending messages of threat to the body is going to listen, and it's going to shut down and not work properly. So incorporating some type of behavior change is the most important thing in a functional practice. At least that's our experience. Because do people know what they need to do? Yes. Everybody knows they need to eat better. They know they need to drink more water. They need to know they get outside. They know they need exercise. They know they need to sleep better, but how come they're not doing it? Well, as Joe Dispenza says, the hardest thing about change is not doing what I did yesterday. So being able to take your expertise on the physiological side, but then add in a psychological side to that, all of a sudden, what used to take 6 months to a year to 2 years to 3 years for somebody to detox or get over some type of a gut inflammation or whatever the disease could be, now can take, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And they see significant progress. Of course, depending on the disease, there are exceptions for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we're finding now there's more emphasis now on PTSD and how childhood trauma can affect disease. Those with PTSD or traumatic brain injury have been more susceptible to viruses, particularly the COVID virus, and the outcomes are worse for them as well. So once we recognize that, that's been kind of blown off. It's like, man, that wasn't ever figured into the equation. Typically in most mainstream medicine offices and practices, and in psychiatry, the answer was always a pill or a series of pills. You get escalating doses of psychotropic medications that usually puts people in sort of a stupor. So, we have to recognize PTSD. We have to recognize maybe concussion or traumatic brain injury, childhood insults of adolescent, things that have harmed them in their mental health, and, focus on that a bit, kind of integrate that into the practice of functional dietary supplements, exercise, nutrition.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that when you have the ability to, and that's part of what we do is we help people kind of set up their program design and delivery. But the other thing is really changing the structure of the business to more of a flat fee transformational structure.
Explain that to the audience.
And I know a lot of people are like, oh, this guy might be marketing hype, but before you roll your eyes, just let's take an example. Let's take diabetes, which according to some sources in North America are saying 50% of the population is diabetic. That's 1 out of 2 people. That's one away from everyone. And we need to stop that, because what happens if everybody has diabetic? I don't know if you guys, JP, you probably know this, but I think it was the first time last year our life expectancy has decreased in 200 years.
Yeah. It's been downward trending after the last couple of years. The first time in history. Yep.
Yeah, first time in history. So let's take diabetes. Now, according to the Center of Disease Control, the CDC in Atlanta, a person in the United States of America, lower 48 states, with health insurance is spending out of their own pocket $16,750 to manage diabetes. Now, what happens when we manage a disease, JP?
Well, it's a Band-Aid. Traditional, you go to see an endocrinologist or family medicine, they're not going to tell you about what to eat or what not to eat. They'll say, eat whatever the hell you want, just dial up your insulin. And here, you're on metformin, you're on insulin, you're on Ozempic, your GLP-1s, you're on pharma. It's the sick system is supporting pharma. That's you follow the scent of the money, and that's where it is. So we got to get away from that.
And you've been in healthcare for a long time, and tell me if I'm correct on this. When you manage disease, the one thing that I can guarantee you is that it always gets worse.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah. And you develop polypharmacy, and with that, you've got medications to manage the side effects and adverse reactions of other medicines, and it's a slippery slope. You'll never get out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, in my case, my stepfather, Richard, who was diabetic since his 30s, which was adult onset diabetes back then. Well, he managed it. He managed mitigating the symptoms. He had insulin. He did his finger pricks. He managed his diabetes right into leukemia, and it killed him 6 months later at 69 years old. So we have a little bit of a passion here. But let's just pretend somebody comes to you with they're diabetic. And let's say, I don't know, their A1C is above 9.0, and that's where the blurred vision comes in. That's where the poor circulation comes in. That's where the possible amputation comes in. That's where the cognitive decline seriously comes in. They're possibly, if they're working at a job, are going to probably lose their job. Let's say they come in, you help them lower their A1C, their blood sugar, and maybe they get off of insulin. And I've seen it as little as 9 to 14 days. right? Their cognitive ability comes back. Of course, their A1C is not going to drop for probably 3 months, the way that works, but they start feeling great again. And let's say you've got a $5,000 thing. You just saved that person almost 12 grand in year one and just gave them their life back. It's absolutely incredible. And this works for almost any disease or dysfunction that could be fixed with integrative or functional health. And over a 10-year period, it's like $165,000. You just put back in that person's pocket. So imagine what happens to that person's life when you basically hand them on a silver platter $165,000 and a life that they can actually enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, you just added 5 grand to the bottom line. That's what I'm talking about. Is that a good example?
Yeah, that's a great example. So the thing is, it's a different mindset, and it's a scary proposition because the clients will probably say, well, what kind of guarantees do I have that this is going to work? I mean, I'll briefly talk about my situation. So I did 20 years in emergency medicine within the system. My overhead was zero. I mean, it was a stethoscope and a set of scrubs and the gas in my tank to get me to the ER and back. And that was it. I didn't have to hire anyone. I didn't know what the heck E-Verify was. I didn't care. I didn't have to manage staff. That was all done for me by the hospital. So I made a clean 1099. I was an independent contractor. So I got a big check every month. But then it was becoming difficult to practice and wear 2 hats once I started embracing more of a holistic approach. And that was in the late 90s. So finally retired and moved and set up my own practice, but I had been working for a physical medicine practice for about 2 years. So I had developed a patient base. And when I left that to start my own practice, I'd say 80% of the folks followed me. So boom, I had an instant sort of patient base. There are other doctors who embrace this kind of hybrid model called VIPMD or similar. And what it is they'll start their practice. They've been in practice maybe 20, 30 years. They'll have 1,000 active patients or maybe 1,500. Well, they send a letter out to all of them saying, look, I'm doing this retainer model. You need to pay $5,000 up front. I'm only going to take 300 to 400 patients. The rest of you're going to have to find another practitioner. Boy, does that piss people off. First of all, they're having to outlay some cash, and then their physicians essentially firing most of them. But then, they start out with sort of an instant patient base. So they're not struggling for the first few months to build clientele. So that's that model. And apparently what I understand from some feedback I'm getting, after 5 years of that model, and those guys are ready to retire from that. Yep. They're not renewing their contracts because it's a VIP kind of concierge. They're on call 24/7.
Yep.
So, if they want to go on vacation, they're going to have to hire someone to step in and fill their shoes because those patients are expecting, to pick up the phone and call a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock because they got a UTI and expect some kind of whatever treatment. And that's not functional. That VIPMD is just traditional mainstream medicine. It's just a different model of how they get paid. And it's a hybrid because they do insurance. So there's that whole headache. So what would you tell, let's say a newbie, somebody who's, let's say they're urology, and it's a family nurse practitioner in a urology practice, and she doesn't know a whole lot about general functional medicine, but she wants to get out of the matrix. She's in Kansas, and she wants to open up her own functional medicine practice. Now, what I do is I provide the education for them, and I can also help them with building, the back office, the platforms, all that stuff to help them get started. But what I don't have is the marketing. How should they market themselves? How do they get off the ground running and draw patients in?
So what I'll do is I'm going to start with what we call the 3 constraints affecting the wellness industry the most. And then I'm going to pass over to Eléa, and she can talk about like the victories of what happens and how we get out there and we market. So what we're seeing, and it's been common, there are impact constraints. And this basically means either the people showing up, coming in through the door, aren't achieving great results because they're just not following protocol, or what they used to call being compliant, right? And or there's just not enough people coming through the door. Then number 2, there are time constraints. And this is when we spend too much time working in the business instead of on the business. So we actually own a job and we don't own a business. I'm sure everybody can relate to that one, right? And there's no time for life outside of work and all that kind of stuff. Or there's just no time for anything because of number 3, and those are cash flow constraints. And that is either the profit margins are just too low or there's just not enough cash flow coming to the door. And usually it's a combination of those two. And so from a marketing perspective, Eléa, talk about kind of like how we get out there and we really, instead of marketing the transaction, we market the transformation.
Yeah, I think it's really important. A lot of times, what we see in all facets of, people who focus in wellness is that transactional model, as Adam said. And what we mean by that is, here's my pricing to come see me for this many sessions, whether that's with a functional practitioner or even with let's say a physical therapist who can help people avoid back surgery, right? It's all about how many sessions that you're going to get and what it is per session. So a transformational model, we're really looking more at, hey, you're looking at down, the bullet of having back surgery. If you'd like to avoid back surgery and not have to deal with the costs and the downtime, then let's go ahead and get your back pain healed without surgery. So here we're talking about the transformation that someone wants versus how much it is to come and see me. And so that's where the flat fee can come into play, where we're really looking at, okay, the flat fee is to receive the transformation, and it's not about the amount of sessions that they get. And so I think this is a really, really important distinction. And what I always like to remind people is oftentimes it can be really powerful in your practice to have a hybrid of this. So the high ticket or the VIP model, it might not be for every single person in your practice. So let's say I always like to say there's that timeline of illness. So when people have a problem, a lot of times at the beginning, they're going to look on YouTube or buy a book, or maybe they'll come see you for a couple of, sessions or a couple of meets and get some information and do stuff. But the illness is not maybe bothering them enough that they're really willing to commit to doing what they need to do on their side to get results. So for these people, it could be more of a transactional model. But for people that are at the point where they're like, I've been trying to fix this problem for years and it won't go away. It's really bothering me. I'm at my, my wit's end here. And if we take them where there's a high level of emotional and or physical pain, and they invest at a high level, and the practitioner is able to show up at a high level, not necessarily having to take calls on Saturdays, but there's ways that we can structure it so the client feels supported, but it's not like you have to be on call 24/7. That's when I call the magic soup that happens, because when people invest at that high level, it's like, I'm not going to let myself off the hook this time. I'm not going to go into the office, be told what I should be doing, and then go home and do the exact opposite, because I really don't want to do these things, or I'm having a hard time changing my lifestyle habits. So I think what's really important here is to look at, do I want to have transactional and transformational offers? Do I want to just have one or the other? And what is really going to fit your business just kind of depends, right? Sometimes we see people who, again, are in a practice with multiple practitioners, and maybe they have their beginning practitioners doing the more transactional model with one-on-ones, and then a more seasoned or senior practitioner is going to do a more transformational, high impact pricing offer here. So again, too, I think it's really important to take a look at what is possible for your specific business. And again, if you have a few high impact, high ticket offers, it can really transform the bottom line without having to see more patients.
Oh, you said the HT word. You got to go put $1 in the swear jar.
Yeah.
It's not high ticket.
High impact equaling high ticket.
Okay.
Yes.
And I want to make the difference here. High ticket, the focus is on your bank account. High impact, the focus is on the person that you're serving. Yeah. And that's a term that we've coined, and that's why we call it impact-driven profit systems. Because if the patient or the person coming in the door isn't having massive transformations with their health and wellness, this stuff doesn't work. So if your intention is on just filling your bank account with millions of dollars, what we do is not going to work for you. But if your intention is probably what you took the Hippocratic Oath in the first place, right, is to serve humanity and make it better and help them through sickness and wellness and stuff like that, then yes, this stuff does really work. And getting back to JP's question is like, okay, what about the marketing? How do you do the marketing? For most people, they think they have to have these complicated marketing funnels, this complicated advertising and all this stuff. And really, most of the practitioners we work with, we don't even use any type of paid advertising. They don't need to be a celebrity. They don't have to have a series of podcasts. They don't have to dump buckets of content on social media. They don't have to blitz any of that stuff. Typically, it's tapping into your warm network. And those are people who already know who you are, in doing it, but in a very high integrity, ethical way, kind of inviting people to see what you do. And another thing I want to put on there is when we develop a high impact offer, we usually start with one disease or dysfunction. It could be diabetes. It could be rheumatoid arthritis. It could be GERD. It could be infertility. That's a really big one right now. And what ends up happening is a lot of practitioners will think, oh my gosh, am I going to be stuck in this niche? And it's like, no, it's just a focus of a marketing campaign. This is what gets people to come in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're going to come in the door with all kinds of problems. Trust me, it's not just that one.
Right. Yeah. They'll come in with arthritic pain, it's migratory arthritis, and the rheumatologist said, hey, we want to put you on some of these dangerous biologics or drugs, and then they'll come to you for another opinion, and then all of a sudden you're working with them with bioidentical hormones, or you're working with weight loss for their obesity or whatever. So yeah.
Exactly.
I think one thing that's really important too to just mention is how we're communicating with potential clients and or current clients in our messaging. And so, JP, you had mentioned, I think this is really fascinating when a practitioner might be moving to that more VIP model, and it's like they send out a message about, hey, it's $5,000 now, flat fee to work with me, and then yada yada yada. And I think what's really important is how we deliver that message, and really understanding sales psychology and how those numbers impact us. So if we kind of are just sending out a blanket message or sending out a message that suddenly our fees have gone up, but we don't have anything to compare that number to, our brain instantly is just like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. Like, I can't believe it. And it might be like, I'm not going to do that. But if we're able to really express and help people see how much money they are actually already spending, it's like I like to say, you're spending money either way. You're either spending money to be sick or you're spending money to stay well. Like,
you're spending more to be sick.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. So if we can help people really see what they're already spending to basically stay sick, and we're just transferring that money into a different place in order to stay well, then it's extremely, extremely powerful. But for a lot of people to get that messaging across successfully it's a tall challenge for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the thing is the pitch. We know in functional medicine that the 5 and 10 year, they're going to save lots of money. In premiums to their insurance and trips to the doctor's office and expensive medications, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, what they're seeing is they're so short-sighted. They're seeing the first year, the first 6 months, and you're like, you want me to spend how much money on a membership or on a care plan? And they just don't see the long-term, 5, 10 year out. And that has to be explained. So the staff has to be trained. Whoever's doing new patient onboarding or intakes, or answering inquiries that come in through email, they have to know what to say, and they have to be trained and scripted well on how to communicate the right message. But I love this whole transactional versus transformational thing. I think that's a key point. That's a key philosophical point.
I like, and JP, just to break down what you just said. So that's what we call the enrolling phase, right? So if we look at how we work with the practices, we've got 4 areas. And the first one is going to be structure. It's all about the business structure, right? Setting things up. So first and foremost, the people coming in the door are getting the strongest results possible in the shortest period of time. They're saving thousands of dollars while the practice has a healthy bottom line and their practitioner is not burning out trying to get it in the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then number 2, we go into messaging, and Eléa was alluding to that. And it's really how to communicate your true impact. Right? So anything you say in a conversation, or you write in an email, or if you even write a letter or a post or an ad, takes people from who the heck is this JP guy to JP, thank you for taking my money and saving my life. And we want to do that with high integrity ethics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then number 3, so think about it like this. So if structure is the proverbial shop, right? Messaging is the sign that we're going to hang outside the shop. Then number 3 is marketing. And marketing is simply, where are we going to hang the sign? Get it in front of the right eyeballs. So we uncomplicate things. We lighten the load. Marketing isn't like this thing that I have to do. It becomes actually something, it's good for the business, right? It's not a money drain anymore. And we got the right people coming in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that's where we like to type. It's a term, a marketing term. It's not a very good one because we're dealing with real people, but it's called a warm network. And that is people who already know who you are launching this offer out, because most practitioners have between $500 to $3 million in opportunity sitting right there already in the people they've worked with or in their list. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Then once we have marketing, then we have number 4 enrolling, and that is, what do you say when somebody opens the door and comes inside the shop? So it's all about getting the right people. What I mean by the right people, the ideal patient, because I'm sure you've never worked with a challenging person in your life, have you, JP?
All the time. That's all we get these days, is really challenging people, not just personality wise challenging, but also sick. You know, we were a wellness center, you know, proactive preventive medicine. And now, because of the pandemic and everything involved with that, we're seeing some really sick people that have had their lives change, you know.
Well, when I mean ideal client, I mean psychologically, right? These are the ones who are first and foremost decisive. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're ready to get their health back, and they're ready to get it back now. Number 2, they're committed, because we're all committed to something. Every human being is. We're either committed to our excuses, our doubts, and our fears, or we're committed to victory. We're committed to doing whatever it takes in order to get our health on track. And that's going to be the hiring the functional integrator practitioner. Of course, doing things ethically and legally. And then number 3, it comes down to resourcefulness. And most people think that's just a financial thing, but it's actually more of a time thing, because they have to understand that we're working with a lot of adults. Some of them are parents, some of them are have jobs, some of them are both. And that they have to understand that if they come in and work with Dr. Salibi, that doing what he says to do is the path to victory with their health, right? Following his protocol is how they're going to win. And they also have to understand that there's no price to pay to have Dr. Salibi's help. There's no cost to work with Dr. Salibi. Instead, it's a giant investment that has a huge payback on the rest of their life. And that's what I mean by that, bringing in the ideal client or the right patient at the right price. And that's that flat fee, to where they're actually showing up with skin in the game. And you as a practitioner show up at a higher level too, because you have a healthier bottom line and a healthier profit margin, and you're not working as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So this whole new paradigm that you guys are talking about also kind of runs in sync with the new paradigm in healthcare, which is well care, not sick care. So if we're going to wipe the blackboard clean and start from scratch, why not do it not only in the way we practice medicine clinically, but also how we practice our practice, you know, how we handle the business end of it. So we're coming out kind of top of the hour here. Any last comments? And then I want you to give the audience information on how to get a hold of you guys.
Yeah, I would say, you know, Eléa, if looking at our track record, if this doesn't speak to it, and I'll give you some actual data and facts. So last year, we were fortunate enough to work with 207 practitioners, and they transformed the health of 6,211 people. That's 6,000 lives, 6,000 fellow humans. Our clients helped turn disease and dysfunction into wellness. And they had some cool business wins, right, Eléa?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like healthy bottom lines, more time off, a roster of ideal clients and patients. But more importantly, their personal patients and their personal clients are celebrating T2 diabetics lowering A1Cs below 5.6 naturally. Epileptics becoming seizure-free without needing medication or brain surgery. Women getting pregnant when they never thought they would. Hormone imbalances, they're being balanced. Menopause, what menopause? I'm not pausing, right? Autoimmune disorders being vanquished. Moms conquering incontinence after kids. Chronic back pain being erased. Obesity subjugated without gastric bands. Fibroids shrinking, and hysterectomies avoided, right? Hashimoto's and Graves actually being taken care of without having a thyroid removed. If that isn't a cool victory, and that is just a short list on top of that, I don't know what it is. So as far as what we do, I mean, our company's called MoveThinkSmile. MoveThinkSmile.com. And that's how you guys can get in touch with us. There, you go to that website, there's actually a video right there that describes exactly what we do. And if it's something you're interested in, there's another little link right there that says book a demo, and we'll be happy to share with you the frameworks that we use with our clients. And we do offer a pretty, I would say, obscene confident guarantee. And that is, if your practice doesn't improve, we'll buy it. And we've never had to honor that because we're pretty good at what we do.
Awesome. Well, that's the
Yeah.
kind of reassurances I think our attendees, the folks watching this who aren't already in their DPC practice, who are kind of contemplating it. That's a great sort of guarantee. Eléa, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, we also have a public Facebook group where we have tons of incredible content where we talk about, again, more in depth of these concepts. We have client interviews where, you know, a lot of people have talked about sort of how this business, you know, model has transformed their businesses and that sort of thing. So I think, you know, for those that this is, you know, piquing your interest, you can also join our group and really dive into some of the incredible content we have there as well.
Well, yeah. So if you go to, can I share my screen real quick?
Oh, yeah. Let me see. Let me make sure I give you ability to do that. Oops. Okay, you should be able to screen share.
Perfect. So you guys just come over to MoveThinkSmile. So you can see it, MoveThinkSmile.com, integrated marketing, functional business growth. There's a video right there. I would say watch that first. It kind of just really boils down to like 8 minutes, what we talked about today. If you're interested in booking a demo, cool. If you're like, hey, I need to check some other stuff out, we've got some pretty cool options here. We actually have a very powerful workshop. JP was part of it back in February, but we did another one. Ended up being 4 hours long just a few weeks ago. And we did a 3-hour action session after that. If you want to go down the rabbit hole and you really want to know what's going on, I would suggest do the workshop. The group that Eléa was talking about, well, we've got a really powerful group of people making this planet a healthier place. You can join that for free. And not that we're trying to sell a book, but if you're interested in our book, I would say do these two first. You'll like these two a lot better for sure. But then just to prove that we actually have a book, it's all over Amazon and iTunes and stuff like that. But those are basically the 3 options we have. If you guys want to come over to MoveThinkSmile.com and kind of check it out. Or if you really want to see some client results, you can click on client results. And I've got like 20 or 25 case studies, everything from functional medical practices all the way down to personal trainers, to nutritionists, to nurse practitioners, physician assistants, doctor of physical therapy, and everything in between.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you both so much, you know, for coming on and being a part of this 2023 Functional Medicine Symposium. I know you guys have talked to us in the past and given some lectures on physician burnout and the such, but always great to have you back. And I'm sure the attendees will find your information very valuable.
And this is still, I guess, Eléa, you could kind of call this a burnout offer in disguise. There's no reason you have to be a functional practitioner and burn out to make this world better.
Yeah.